So tonight's episode could not come any sooner. It's all things Oklahoma. Grab a drink and join us on tonight's Tailgate. So, hey, thanks for joining us on tonight's Tailgate. We have Preston from the PG Show to talk all things Sooners today. How you doing, Preston?
I'm doing good. How are y'all?
Doing very well.
Doing well.
So, the first question, we kind of ask this to everybody. Oklahoma, what's the story? Why are you an Oklahoma fan? Were you raised in Oklahoma? Was it you were raised right? Your family was Oklahoma fans?
Are you strictly just bandwagoning?
Oh, yeah.
I guess you could call it a bandwagon, but we haven't won no national championship to bandwagon up of. So not like a lot of these Alabama fans out there that seem to more and more every year. But no, I really started to watch Oklahoma football 2006, 2007. I'm only 27 years old though. For context, I'm only 27. Okay. So 2006, 2007, that's when I really started to watch it because my parents would watch it, so I'd go downstairs. And I think my first memories are actually listening. I had a little radio by my bedside, so listening to OU and Missouri in the Big 12 Championship. I think that was in 2007. So didn't go to college. Luckily, got out of that because I definitely didn't want to do school. But yeah, I've just been Oklahoma my whole life. It's just right down the road. So, I've been to a lot of games. It's kind of just an inherited
sure.
team.
Makes sense.
I mean, I totally understand that. That's like, I mean, I grew up in Central Florida, but my dad was a diehard Tennessee fan, and he refused to let me be a Gators fan. And so he just instilled in me from like the 97 season on. He was just like, you are going to be a Vols fan. So I mean, the family heritage and lineage and legacy, I totally get it. So.
Yep, my dad's from Grove City, Ohio. I was raised in Nashville, but yeah, I was raised right. I was raised a Buckeye, so
I was raised much better out West Coast, so I've always been just a general pack guy. But no, I mean, now that they're basically non-existent, I'm a little heartbroken.
Yeah.
Well, as an Ohio State fan, you probably don't like this picture right here then, because that's Baker owning that field.
Oh, yeah. Is that him planting the flag that never actually got planted?
Yep.
Yeah. I love it. It's part of it's just part of the sport. It's fun. And then next time we play, hopefully we can return the favor.
I mean, you guys are used to losing big games, so it doesn't even matter.
We have lost a lot of big games recently, so let's not talk about that.
I mean, as far as that goes, though, like I guess when it comes to coaching, like just the coaching staff in Oklahoma and everything, how's that going?
I've actually been looking at making a video about this because I've actually talked to quite a few people over the past couple of weeks, and it really started to pick up as of this weekend when Lincoln Riley went out there and spurred off 3 or 4 freaking defensive recruits. Like he was picking them out like they were cupcakes on a platter or something. I don't know. Yeah. But I've had people like legitimate, like these are like legitimate Oklahoma fans. These are not like just some randoms in the comments. Ask me and DM me, is Brent Venables the right guy for the job? Is he going to be able to deliver a national championship? Like Lincoln Riley just went out to USC and landed a defensive lineman faster than Brent Venables could land one at Oklahoma. And I was like,
true.
I think we're overreacting.
Yeah.
And, going to the SEC, obviously the task to win a national championship is harder. I think Oklahoma's window to win a championship is probably 2026, 2027. I say that because 2024 and 2025, our schedules are pretty identical, right? Yeah. You're just flipping them. You're just going away, playing the guys that you played this year away at home. In 2026 and 2027, you're getting Texas's SEC schedule, which when I look at it, I go, that's a little bit more favorable. Like, if all you got to do is get past Georgia, Oklahoma, historically, beats Texas A&M. And all those other teams, Oklahoma is just every year better than talent-wise. So no reason why in 2026 and 2027, those can't be years that they go compete for a national championship, especially if this playoff is expanded to 12, 14, 16 teams, whatever they want it to be by then.
I heard 64 I hear is going to come up next.
They're going to be there.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Well, and you got to put a little thorn in Ohio State's side by keeping your running backs coach. Since ours had to go to a rival and we had to have to try and steal somebody from somebody else, he got to stay. What are your thoughts on him? Was that a big loss for Ohio State to not get him? Are you glad he's staying? Or you?
It's weird because I have heard how close Oklahoma was to losing DeMarco Murray. Like, it really was close. But at the same time, as an Oklahoma fan, we didn't feel worried. Like, there was no real fear that this man was going to leave the University of Oklahoma to go be the running backs coach at Ohio State. It was a lateral move, so it didn't make sense. We all knew Oklahoma was going to pay. It was just a timing thing. Like, how fast can Oklahoma get an extension or a raise put together in front of DeMarco Murray? And, Brent Venables has said multiple times he wants his staff to go out and interview for jobs. He wants them to take those moves. But, in DeMarco's position, it only makes sense if it's an OC job at this point, OC or a head coach job. It doesn't make sense to make a lateral move because you have just as much talent at Oklahoma as Ohio State. So, I think Oklahoma fans, and I made a video on this, it was a massive move for Oklahoma because all offseason we heard Bill Beatonbow was contacted by Alabama. You had Todd Bates and Auburn were a thing at one point, right? And then you heard DeMarco Murray interviewed for NFL jobs, Michigan job, and now the Ohio State job. All that proved was Oklahoma and the administration is willing to invest in their position coaches and their coordinators, meaning they're willing to do whatever it takes to keep them there, keep continuity, as long as it makes sense for both sides. Honestly, if DeMarco Murray was going to get an OC job somewhere, it probably doesn't make sense to offer him a bunch of money to stay. Let the man go. Let him be an OC, and go get yourself another great running backs coach. But to let him leave to make a lateral move, that doesn't make sense for either side.
Especially if he leaves his alma mater, like I feel like at that point.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And, I'm obviously an Ohio State fan. I've talked to a bunch of the Ohio State guys. And, one of the things that I've told them is like, I think we just don't get a guy. If we can't get DeMarco, if we can't get an A-list guy, we got a veteran running back room, just let them do their thing, let head coach kind of take that role and move forward. But, I was a little disappointed. I didn't think he was going to come, but obviously I would have loved to have him. So, but in terms of your players, obviously you have a big quarterback loss with Gabriel, but then you have your 5-star guy. You have, what's his name, Jackson Arnold, is that right?
Arnold.
And he looked great in that bowl game. I think that you've got a guy there, right? What are some more of the key losses? What are some of the big, portal guys? And then the second part of that question is, who's the guy that you're watching this year? Who's the guy that you think is going to take this huge leap, or, that you're excited about seeing on the field?
Yeah, so I'll start with question one, which is, what was the big loss? And quite honestly, a lot of people looked at Dylan Gabriel because that's the name they all knew and said, what's going on at Oklahoma? They just lost their starting quarterback. That's a huge deal. It was expected. We all knew Dylan Gabriel, whether he wanted to come back for another year of college football or not, was not going to be at Oklahoma. The understanding has been this is Jackson Arnold's job. So Dylan Gabriel to Oregon, I don't think it's that big of a loss because you've got a 5-star in the wing in Jackson Arnold who he's got the speed, he's got the athleticism, and I think something that he has that we haven't had, I think probably since, I think Rattler was 6'1" or 6'2", but I think Baker was 6'4". Jackson Arnold's tall.
Yeah. He's a big guy.
You get the height. You don't have that small quarterback hanging behind the offensive lineman. That's important. But the biggest loss in the transfer portal for Oklahoma was one they didn't expect in Caden Green. That one hurt because you now lost. Technically, it's not your whole starting offensive line, but Jacob Sexton was not playing on the starting line the whole year. So although he is a starting offensive lineman this year, and he is that good, probably a first rounder in this year's draft when it comes up for the 2025 draft. Caden Green was going to be your foundational piece to this offensive line. Losing him, especially to Missouri, that was just a very odd situation, how all of that unfolded to begin with. That's the one that hurts Oklahoma the most.
Okay.
Now, I look at guys that I'm excited for, I'm going to give you two here. One on the offense, one on the defense.
Perfect.
Starting with the defensive side of the ball, you've got to go to the defensive line for Oklahoma. And I'm not going to cop out and say David Stone, even though that's what most Oklahoma fans are saying. I'm going to say Jaden Jackson. This is a defensive lineman that has, throughout spring, throughout the time he's been in Oklahoma so far, he has been a standout. He's been a guy that's been getting first-team reps. Like, he is going to be an absolute stud for Oklahoma. And he, quite frankly, went under. I don't understand how he flew under the radar so much, because you look at what he did in all of these camps. The dude is an absolute monster on that defensive line, especially in what Oklahoma wants to run at the 3T. So Jaden Jackson on the defense, but on the offense, I've got to stay in the trenches. And I'm going to say, I'm excited to see what Oklahoma has in Heath Ozida, which was a 23 recruit for Oklahoma. He was a freshman last year. I think he got a couple of times to get on the field and garbage time minutes, but he's a guy that I hear has been an absolute standout on that offensive line. And whether or not he actually starts, Heath Ozida is going to be getting some massive playing time for Oklahoma in some sort of rotational role. He's one of those young guys that was a 3-star that we all know what Bill Bedenbaugh has been able to do with 3 stars. Hence Creed Humphrey, Orlando Brown. Look at them in the NFL, right? Some of the best offensive linemen. I look at Heath Ozida as a guy that's like, man, this guy, if he puts it all together, could he be a 3rd or a 4th round pick, maybe a little bit higher than that? I'm really excited to see what he's able to do this season.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, you guys have any other like big news that's going on over there? Like things that you're hearing from like the spring practice or scrimmage or anything like that? Just other things that make you guys excited for this upcoming season, or just even for the development for the players for this off season?
Yeah, I mean, you're finally hearing about. Last year, you heard Brenton Venables and the staff talk about competitive depth. We got competitive depth this year, and you kind of saw it a little bit. Yeah. But as we got into later in the season, Danny Stutzman gets hurt. You know, you started to see that defense start to bend a little bit harder. You know, we lost a couple games in there. This year, you're hearing the competitive depth is there from top to bottom. Like, you lose Danny Stutzman, you've probably got 2 or 3 linebackers now that can step in the fold because they're in their 2nd or 3rd year. Yeah. And I think that's so important. When you look at a Brent Venables defense, a lot of these guys, they sit their first year because understanding how to operate in his defense is so hard, and they're just not at the weight or where you want them to be. So now you've got all of these guys in their 2nd and 3rd years. They're ready to go. Like, you're hearing up and down the board, whether it's cornerbacks, linebackers, or even defensive line, that these rooms, they're going to be ready to go for the SEC. Now, there's obviously some questions at defensive line after losing Jacob Lacey just to medical retirement. And like, hey, you know, do we have enough depth there? Right? Or are we going to see Oklahoma try to hit the portal? 100% you're going to see Oklahoma turn to the portal, try to find another starting defensive lineman or somebody that can be a really solid rotational piece. But I'm really excited to see how this team finally molds in BV's 3rd year. He stood up there in his press conference when he was hired and said, give me 3 years and we will have Oklahoma contending for a national championship.
Fair enough.
Yep. Yeah. So going into this year, obviously we got the competitive, you can compete, you got the depth, all that good stuff. Where are they going to be at the end of this regular season? What is your prediction? Whether it be a homer prediction, whether it be a, whatever it is, where do you think they stand at the end?
Yeah, so this is a tough one. I've gone back and forth on this. I think Vegas got it wrong. I think Vegas originally put out the over/under at 6.5, and then they moved the line up to 7.5, and I was just like, that still seems very low.
It does.
I look at the schedule and I say, Oklahoma's schedule is pretty favorable. I mean, you go up against a Tennessee team who's going to have a young Nico, so it's like, okay, Oklahoma's probably going to be on a level playing field there. And so, like, I would imagine, since it's at home, I'm going to give it to Oklahoma with a younger quarterback having to come into Norman. And probably what I would assume is, I haven't looked at Tennessee's schedule, probably their first home game. At Auburn, you're more talented than that team. What, Peyton Thorne's going to torch us? Like, come on. Like, as long as you bring the sage, you should be able to beat Auburn. Texas is the toss-up. Texas is always the one I say, when in doubt, count it as a loss, because you never know what's going to happen in that game. Anything can happen. South Carolina at Ole Miss, like those games don't really concern me a whole lot. Really, what worries me is Alabama and LSU.
Okay.
We have no idea what Alabama's going to look like with Kelly like before. And then at LSU, you have Garrett Nussmeier, last game of the season. Like he should have it together. I say tentatively 9-3 would be a really good year for Oklahoma in their first year in the SEC. But I think the ceiling could be 11 wins. I really do.
Yeah.
And if they get 11 wins, obviously they're competing for an SEC championship. And we get to see what they look like probably against Georgia at that point. And I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're taking that. Like you are taking that scenario because you're making the playoffs at that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, any SEC team that's in the conference championship game is going to be in the playoffs. So yeah, I'm with you. The what was it, 7.5 that they were at? I saw that and I thought it was a joke at first, and I had to like double check and be like, is this a fake account? Is this fake news here? Because 7.5 just didn't seem, even like you said, you throw in those toss-up games, you throw up at Texas, even the Tennessee, and you go, okay, worst case scenario here, they have 4 losses, I guess. I just didn't see it. I would bet the over on that every single day.
I see where they got the 7.5 number. They took the 6-7 season we had the first year, and they took the 10 wins we had last year and said Oklahoma's probably somewhere in the middle, right? Yeah. But at the same time, a guy that watches a lot of Oklahoma stuff and you read and you look and see what's going on at the practices and you go, there's no way. And I mean, if you had Tennessee later in the season, that might be a harder game than what I think it will be at the time we play them. I don't see it, especially now that Nick Saban's not at Alabama. I think the schedule just became 100 times lighter.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing about Nick Saban leaving Alabama is that everybody who talks about their game against Alabama is going, I don't know. I don't know how to think about this one. Like last year it's a loss, and this year
a definitive loss. No worries about it.
Who knows?
Yep.
So
well, the problem is Alabama just lost so much. Like I might give them a 10-win season if they didn't lose everything they lost, whether it was in the portal. Because Caleb Downs, I hate to say it, Caleb Downs was probably one of the biggest losses in the portal for any team this season.
I agree.
I mean, yeah, you're getting Caden Proctor back on your offensive line, but still, like
their offensive line was a joke. It was 129th in the country.
Yeah.
I understand. It was 129th in the country allowed for sacks.
He's coming back so far.
Yeah.
We'll see if he stays back.
Let him collect the check 2 months later. Let's find out.
Right. Collect the check, and then
you got to make sure it doesn't bounce.
True.
Yeah, I think one of your games this next year also that's going to be dependent on what does the team actually look like is Missouri. Like Missouri has a lot of returning talent, but Missouri's a weird team. They did really well last year, but they're not known for being phenomenal, like consistent year in and year out. But it's also possible that little Drinkwitz has turned a new leaf. I don't know. So he stands on business from what I understand. So
hey, listen, I will give you your title right here. Oklahoma expert thinks Oklahoma will struggle with Missouri. That's going to rile up Oklahoma fans. They will flood in your comments. They will hate you all for that. But no, Missouri was really good last year. The problem is, look at what they lost in coordinators. From what I understand, it wasn't Drink. It was the coordinators.
Yeah.
So, I am curious to see, are they able to piece it back together and put together another competitive 10-win season, which if they do, Missouri might be a real threat, a real problem in the future, especially since I think there's a difference between what they're doing and what A&M was doing. Well,
sure,
still doing. A&M was just buying best available player. They weren't even trying to be like, hey, we
miss now, right?
Let's go buy that best player.
Right.
They just said, hey, let's go buy the best available. Missouri said, hey, we need cornerbacks, offensive linemen, defensive linemen. Let's go buy the best at that position. And then we'll figure it out once we got him on campus. They didn't just say, hey, Caleb Downs, you're the best available. Let's go grab you, when they already had safeties that probably could get the job done. So I'm interested to see how that works for Missouri, because so far we have not seen a team be successful when they buy players in the transfer portal or the recruiting class.
No.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I mean, again, like I totally can see where you're coming from with your schedule and where your record should sit in comparison to what Vegas has you at. But I also understand your holdouts. I mean, being a Tennessee fan, I literally said, and I've told this too. I don't know if I told it to you, Luke, but I know I've told it to Dennis. Like Oklahoma is one that we're circling because it's just like we don't know what's going to happen because it is a game that I know Oklahoma's going to play hard because our head coach is from Oklahoma. He played at Oklahoma, and so they're gonna probably pull out all the stops. Like both teams are probably gonna pull out all the stops to just for just the legacy of it. Just
I mean, it's gonna be kind of like a homecoming game for him.
Yeah, kind of. And so it's going to be an interesting game, nonetheless. So
that Tennessee game's got a lot of storylines to it.
Mainly,
I mean, you could look at Nico and Jackson, two of the best quarterbacks in that class. At least two that I think have the most upside. But Josh Heupel returning to Norman, and Josh Heupel knows Brent Venables' defense at the time he was in Norman. So I'll be curious to see if he remembers enough of it to be able to play on it. Mm-hmm. But also, like, I do question, like, outside of the games that are in Norman, is Brent Venables, like, I know he's played SEC teams, but he hasn't actually played a very lot, or if any, in the SEC or at SEC homes. How is he going to prepare? Like, I am curious to see how he's going to prepare this team to travel to Death Valley or to Ole Miss, which I hear is a rowdy crowd, or heaven forbid that godforsaken place in Auburn. Like, I mean,
that's probably going to be even harder than Death Valley, depending on how Hugh Freeze is doing this year.
Right.
So, and his team, like, I mean, that area, there's a reason why that has a lot of heebie-jeebies even for Alabama.
Here's how they screw Oklahoma: 2:30 at Auburn, 5 o'clock with Ole Miss, 7 o'clock at LSU.
Oh yeah.
Just give them all of the best environments for those stadiums. Yeah, you're asking for it.
Yeah.
Columbia, Missouri. Yeah.
No, but if you get LSU at 11 o'clock, just do what Tennessee did and just blow them out of the water.
You get LSU at 7.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother
that is the drunkest fan base. They're going to be loud and obnoxious.
So well, again, we appreciate you coming on tonight and talking about your Sooners and everything like that, and we wish you the best of luck in this off season with whatever else goes on, all the crazy news and updates. Before we sign off tonight, go ahead and plug the audience. Let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, if y'all are an Oklahoma fan and y'all aren't watching my show, what are y'all doing? Y'all can find me on YouTube, The PG Show, or on any of the podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify. There, we probably do more softball and football, like they're longer episodes. YouTube, we're kind of doing the 10-minute or less episodes with some occasional 30-minute episodes. But yeah, that's where you guys can find me at.
Cool. Yeah, cool. Well, again, thanks for coming on, and we look forward to having you on in the future, especially after Tennessee and Oklahoma play. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be a determining factor, I think, for either school.
All right, man. Well, have a great night.
All right.
Have a good night.